The guard hit her before anyone remembered the cameras were still recording. They called it a school, but it floated like a cage above a gas giant. The Orbis Institute clung to a ring, classrooms bolted between reactor ducts and cargo bays. Everything smelled of metal and disinfectant. Rhea Kael walked the main spine with her shoulders loose and gaze lowered, every step rehearsed to look harmless. Act small, her mother had said on the last night under a sky that threw stones instead of rain. Deathworld children survive by not giving predators an excuse. Around her, students of half a dozen species streamed toward drills. Gills fluttered. A trio of Arden drifted to the far rail as she passed. One stared at the scar along her forearm until his tutor tugged him away. Deathworlder, someone whispered, the word riding the hum of the corridor. Rhea let it slide. The ring shuddered as a freighter latched on 2 decks below. She counted the pulses through her boots. Cargo, not patrol. The security checkpoint for Block D narrowed the spine into scanners and flickering gates. Above it, a peeling sign promised safety through order in 6 languages. Under it, 2 armored guards watched bodies flow past with predatory focus. One straightened when he saw her. Sergeant Vorn should have been off shift. Instead he leaned against the post like he'd been waiting, heavy tail wrapped around a bench, claws tapping a rhythm. Kael, he called as she joined the queue. Hold back. Students filed through the gate, horns and feathers and frills passing under humming scanners. Rhea stayed still. A few glances slid over her and away, as if meeting her gaze might count as picking a side. When the corridor emptied, the noise dropped to a thin whine. Only distant engines, the buzz of the gate, and Vorn's tapping claws remained. He pushed off the wall and stalked toward her, helmet sliding up, then folding back again. His partner, still too new to have a scuffed name tag, shifted his weight. You were logged in the gym after curfew, Vorn said. No greeting. An accusation dressed as routine. Rhea focused on the seam of his shoulder plate. System misread, sir. I was in sanitation. Block C showers. He snorted. You telling me the system lies? I'm saying steam fogs the sensors sometimes. Her voice stayed level. On her world, tone could calm a pack or make it kill. Vorn stepped closer, filtered breath warm on her cheek. Funny. I checked. Cameras didn't show you in sanitation. Truth flickered on her tongue. She'd been awake in the dark, fists wrapped, running drills until the ghosts of home went quiet. Forests that hunted back. Storms that tracked your heartbeat. But the ring didn't want that. I was in my bunk, sir, she said. Maybe the logs glitched. His eyes narrowed. You always have an answer, don't you? Her muscles tightened on reflex, old patterns waking, quiet and exact. Read the threat. Measure distance. Map exits. Bulkhead seam. Weak joint at his elbow. Unlock tool locker 2 meters left. Vorn leaned in until his ridged forehead nearly brushed hers. You think doing everything by the rules makes you safe here? No, sir, she replied. Nothing does. For a heartbeat, it seemed that would be enough. Then a group of younger students rounded the far corner, talk loud and careless. One saw Rhea and cut off mid-laugh. Their steps faltered. Vorn noticed. He shifted so the group had a clear view of her. His voice rose half a notch, polished for an audience. See this, he said, pointing a claw at her chest. This is what happens when you bring ferals into orbit. They think rules are decoration. Heat crawled along Rhea's neck. She smothered it. The kids stared, wide-eyed. With respect, sir, she said, I haven't broken any rules. His gaze sharpened, something mean settling into his posture. There it is, he murmured. That tone. That little bite. He stepped closer, close enough for her to see hairline cracks in his lower fangs. Say it again, he breathed. Tell me I'm wrong. Deathworlder. The corridor seemed to narrow. The orientation officer's warning echoed in her memory. Any aggressive reaction will be logged as confirmation of threat profile. Any escalation will be treated as premeditated. She inhaled once, slow. "Sir," she said. "You are in my way." The words were plain. Too plain. They dropped between them like a stone. The younger guard flinched, half raising a hand, and then Vorn moved. His palm smashed across her face with enough force to blur the lights. The crack of it carried down the spine. Metal grating bit her boots as her head snapped sideways. For a second, the world smeared into noise and glare. Someone cursed. The younger guard hissed her name. A camera chirped from the ceiling as it tagged the impact. Rhea didn't fall. She let her knees soften, letting the force bleed through her frame. Pain surged along her jaw, hot and precise. Her fingertips buzzed. Blood salted the back of her tongue. Every lesson from home screamed at her to move. On that world, you never let a strike stand. But this was a ring wired with sensors and bias, full of people waiting to see her snap. So she stood. She forced her shoulders loose, hands open, gaze lowered. And something deep in her body decided it had seen enough. At the base of her skull, behind scar tissue and an Academy-issued compliance chip, another system woke. It uncurled in a rush of cold, not like fear but like a decision. Her vision sharpened. Overhead strips became individual threads of light. She heard everything: Vorn's breathing, the tremor in the younger guard's exhale, the low thrum of cargo locks cycling far away. A sensation that wasn't sound brushed the inside of her thoughts. Autonomic survival protocol, threshold exceeded. Her heartbeat slowed. Air separated into layers on her tongue: ozone, metal, cleanser, the sour tang of Vorn's skin. Time stretched. Vorn took half a step back. "Look at me," he ordered. Rhea raised her head. Her eyes were no longer brown. Rhea didn't blink. The darkness in her gaze wasn't a shadow, it was a depth, an absence, a place light couldn't enter. Even the scanner above them stuttered, its beam flickering across her pupils as if uncertain what it was detecting. Vorn's jaw worked once. What did you just activate?" She didn't answer. Couldn't. The protocol that had risen inside her wasn't a weapon system. It wasn't military. It was older, something encoded into the survivors of her world over centuries. A genetic failsafe born from living on a planet that tried to erase you every time you slept. Behind her, the younger guard whispered, "Sergeant," her vitals just spiked. "I see it." Vorn snapped, though his voice had lost its bark. He reached for the stun baton holstered at his hip, claws trembling. Rhea watched the motion in slow, terrifying clarity. The baton's charge pack hummed at a frequency most species couldn't hear. She could. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Her thoughts moved too fast, clean lines of assessment snapping across her awareness. If he drew it, he'd swing. If he swung, the ring's sensors would classify the encounter as lethal. If it classified as lethal, her protocol would finish what it had started. "No," she whispered, the word layered with something not entirely her own. "Don't do that." The younger guard stepped between them instinctively. "Sergeant, maybe we should call command." "She's not attacking." Vorn shoved him aside. "She's malfunctioning." "Step back." The word malfunction cut something inside her. Not because it was wrong, but because she had heard it before. On Earth. In the shelters. From the medics who slapped compliance tags onto children who shook at thunder they'd grown up surviving. Rhea exhaled. The world trembled in sync. Her protocol whispered again. Behavioral threat, external. Emotional threat, suppressed. Recommended action, containment. Containment. Not violence. Not retaliation. Containment. The corridor lights dimmed. Somewhere above, a power relay tripped. Alarms hiccuped before silencing themselves as the system struggled to categorize what was happening to her. Vorn finally drew the baton. Blue fire arced from its tip. Rhea moved before she thought. One step. A shift of weight. A pivot on her heel. Time folded around her like cloth, the world dragging as she surged forward. Her hand closed around Vorn's wrist before he could swing. He gasped. She didn't squeeze. Didn't force. Just held him still, her fingers steady, her stance rooted. The baton hissed in his grip but didn't strike. The young guard stared, eyes wide, as the black in Rhea's gaze seemed to ripple like ink in water. "I'm not fighting you," she said quietly. "But I'm not letting you hit me again." Vorn tried to pull free. Couldn't. His knees buckled a fraction. "Let go," he rasped. "Release me, Kael." "That's an order." Orders. Always orders. Always the same expectation, that fear would make her obey. She shook her head once. "No." The baton slipped from his grasp and clattered to the floor, the sound echoing down the spine. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then someone screamed. A cluster of students had rounded the far corner and frozen at the sight. One dropped their data slate. Another stumbled back into a wall. A third bolted entirely. Rhea blinked at them slowly. Her protocol mapped every trembling body, every shifting foot, every flared gill. "They think I'm the threat," she realized. Her heart clenched, an echo of old memories, children stepping away from her on Earth because she could climb trees that tore others open, adults whispering that her kind wasn't meant to live long enough to learn gentleness. She released Vorn's wrist. He staggered back, staring at the handprint her fingers had left on his armor. She had touched him gently. But the pressure dented the plating. Vorn saw it. His breath caught. "You're unstable," he managed. "Whatever's in you, it's dangerous." At the edge of her awareness, her protocol hummed. Emotional surge detected. Recommendation: de-escalate. She stepped away, hands raised, palms outward. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said. And for the first time since arriving on the ring, she said it not as reassurance, but as a warning. The young guard swallowed. "We need to get her medical clearance. Now." "She's not going anywhere alone," Vorn said, though the terror in his voice stripped the threat from the words. "Kael, step forward." Slowly. Rhea obeyed. The black in her eyes pulsed once, then dimmed, retreating like a tide pulling back. Her breathing returned to normal. Her pulse steadied. A high, whining tone faded from her ears. The protocol slid back behind the threshold of consciousness. She blinked again. Her eyes were brown. The crowd watched from a distance now, clusters of students peering from behind railings and door frames. She felt their fear like static on her skin. Vorn gestured shakily toward the side corridor. "Med Bay." "Now." Rhea nodded. "Yes, sir." She walked between them, the younger guard guiding her forward with practiced caution. Vorn followed several steps behind, baton forgotten on the floor. The corridor stretched ahead, curving downward toward the core of the ring. Pipes hummed overhead. The temperature dipped. Somewhere a coolant system cycled with a low groan. Rhea's cheek throbbed where he'd struck her, pain blossoming again now that her body's heightened state had relaxed. She kept her hands clasped in front of her, wrists loose, posture small. The younger guard cleared his throat. Are you okay?" She wanted to laugh. Or cry. Or vanish into the metal walls. "I'm fine," she said softly. "You don't look fine." She didn't respond. They turned into another corridor, this one emptier, quieter. A service bot glided past with its arms full of sealant canisters. It slowed as it scanned her, chirped confusion, then hurried away. The young guard hesitated. "Sir, maybe we shouldn't isolate her." "It's procedure," Vorn snapped. "Containment before evaluation." But she didn't attack. She resisted. "That's enough." Rhea watched their argument through a thin, fragile calm. The blackness inside her had gone quiet, but she could still feel it, a slow pulse like a deep ocean current. They reached a junction. Vorn tapped the panel. The med bay door slid open. Rhea stepped inside. And stopped. The room was dark except for a single blue diagnostic strip across the ceiling. Voices murmured behind a partition. Someone moved in the shadows. Then a figure stepped into view. Not medical staff. Not faculty. Not security. Council Envoy Ashrel, one of the highest-ranking observers stationed on the ring. Vorn jerked to attention. Envoy. We weren't told. Ashrel raised a delicate hand. His species looked like carved obsidian lit from within, faint currents of gold running under the stone-like skin. His eyes glowed a soft amber. Leave, he said. The word was not loud, but it cut the air cleanly. Sir, Vorn began, regulations require. Leave. Vorn's throat bobbed. The younger guard looked between them and finally backed into the corridor. The door hissed shut behind them. Rhea stood alone with the envoy. Ashrel tilted his head, studying her with unsettling calm. You triggered a dormant protocol. Rhea swallowed hard. I didn't mean to. Most weapons don't mean to fire, he replied. Yet they do. I'm not a weapon. Then what are you, child of a death world? Rhea forced her breathing steady. I'm a student. A faint smile touched his lips. It wasn't unkind. But it wasn't comforting. No, Ashrel murmured. You are something far rarer. He circled her slowly, hands clasped behind his back. Your world breeds survivors the way other worlds breed tragedies. Your species carries instincts most civilizations lost before they could imagine spaceflight. That doesn't make me dangerous. Everything that survives is dangerous to something. Her jaw tightened. Then why am I here? He stopped behind her, close enough that she could feel the hum of his energy field. To decide, he said. Whether you will be shaped, or suppressed. She shivered. I don't want to hurt anyone. That is not what concerns me, Ashrel said. What concerns me is whether you can choose not to when harm is justified. Her breath halted. He stepped around her and met her gaze. The black in your eyes, he said softly, is an inheritance. A promise. And a warning. Rhea felt her heart hammer. Ashrel leaned closer. Tell me, Rhea Kael, if he struck you again, would you stop the protocol? Or would you let it answer for you? Her voice cracked. I don't know. That, he said, is why the galaxy fears your kind. The door slid open again. Vorn stood there, pale beneath his scales. Envoy, he said hoarsely, command wants a report. Ashrel straightened. You may escort her to the briefing hall. She's not restrained, Vorn said carefully. If she wished to harm you, Ashrel replied, you would not be standing. He turned to Rhea. Go. Rhea stepped past him, the envoy's words echoing. Would you let it answer for you? Vorn led her in silence. The atmosphere shifted as they approached the central ring hub, quieter, heavier. She could feel a tension gathering behind sealed doors, the way storms gathered behind mountains. The briefing hall doors parted. Inside, faculty stood in a semicircle. A hollow of the incident floated in the air, Vorn striking her, her eyes turning black, her hand closing around his wrist with effortless strength. Gasps rippled as she entered. Her chest hollowed. The headmaster stepped forward, his voice carved from ice. Cadet Kael. You will remain confined to quarters pending orbital review. Vorn stiffened. Sir, she. You will remain silent, the headmaster snapped. Your conduct is also under review. Rhea lowered her gaze. Shame curled like smoke in her chest. But somewhere beneath it, the protocol pulsed slow and steady. Quiet. Watching. Waiting. She bowed her head. Yes, sir. She turned as the guards approached to escort her out. But before she stepped through the door, a voice rose from the faculty circle. Let them fear her, someone murmured. Better fear than ignorance. Another whispered, she showed restraint. More than many of us would. Rhea froze. For the first time since arriving on the ring, she realized something. They weren't all afraid of her. Some respected her. Some believed her. Some understood. She straightened. And as she walked out, her eyes, brown again, held a quiet fire the ring had never seen. She didn't know what the review would decide. She didn't know if the galaxy would brand her a threat. But she knew one thing with terrifying clarity. If the stars wanted her to survive, she would. And if they wanted to break her, they would have to earn it. The door closed behind her. The protocol pulsed once in the dark. Like a heartbeat. Like a promise. Like an awakening. She walked into the corridor with her chin lifted and her cheeks still burning from the slap. Not from pain. But from understanding. Some threats are loud. Hers was silent. And the galaxy had just heard it. Earth waited far below the ring, a bruised world still alive. So was she.